Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Politics and Media Show with me, Salma Yaqub. In the first half of tonight's show, we'll be reflecting on some strong criticism of the Muslim faith due to attacks on faith schools. Writing in the Times Educational Supplement last week, Professor Richard Dawkins said Muslim schools, I quote, fill children's heads with alien rubbish as they continue to teach them that creationism is true, unquote. Responding to the comments, the Department of Education said that creationism, which is a religious belief that humanity and the earth are the creation of God, quote, should not be taught as scientific fact. But Dawkins has been criticised also by Muslim groups. The Muslim Council of Britain said it was unreasonable to expect faith schools not to teach fundamental theories of faith. The Association of Muslim Schools UK has also condemned Dawkins for what it describes as his hateful and arrogant attack on Muslim faith schools. Well, with me in the studio to discuss Dawkins' comments and the responses to them is Matthew Wilkinson, Vice Chair of the Muslim Council of Britain's Education Committee. Thank you and welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much.
We're also joined by Richy Thompson, the British Humanist Association's Faith Schools and Education Campaigns Officer. Welcome to the programme. We have two phone guests this week, Ashfaq Chowdhury, Chairman of the Association of Muslim Schools, and Mohammad Mukaddam, the Principal of Leicester Islamic Academy. Welcome to both of you. If I could turn to you first, Richy. Clearly these remarks are controversial. Do you think they were actually designed to be controversial? It's an easy thing to do these days. You know, you say something about Muslims and you become headline news.
I don't really think they were. I mean, if you look at the interview in the TES the week before last, he was actually being interviewed mainly about his new book. And in the course of the conversation, the interviewer asked him, well, what about creationism? And he then referred back to his show Faith School's Menace last year, where he went into a Muslim faith school and found that even the science teacher was teaching that evolution is not real and that creationism is true. And perhaps he made quite strong remarks, but I think it just came out from that. And well, it suddenly took me by surprise the next day when the press picked up on that.
What surprised you? Because
just
surely it's quite obvious that that would be exactly what happened if you make comments like that.
Just that it didn't seem to be anything new, because it was very much in line with what he found last year when he made the programme.
Okay, well, what's been your response in terms of Muslim Council of Britain's response?
Well, we think it's a pretty shameless piece of seeking publicity for his new publication.
So you don't think the timing was purely coincidental?
Purely not coincidental. And it's jumping on the gratuitous bashing of the Muslim community bandwagon, which has gathered momentum, and now it seems that almost anyone can jump on it when it suits them.
But doesn't that sound a little bit like victim mentality, that somebody says something and the Muslim community just say bandwagon, and rather than actually addressing the issue? How about the issue itself? Do you think it is problematic that where we have scientific theories, children being taught something in the mainstream, and if children in faith schools are taught something different, do you think there may be a problem there?
Well, it depends everything depends on the context that these things are being taught. If in an Islamic studies or RE class in a Muslim faith school, teachers are teaching that God is the creator of everything, and that he's provided a framework for us to understand the world in a religious way as the will of God, and as something where God's will needs to be obeyed, that's obviously entirely acceptable. In the science classroom, you're talking a different language, and you're talking the language of evidence and empirical proof. And they're two languages that don't sit easily side by side. So we would say that in the science classroom, a Muslim science teacher would be perfectly entitled to make reference to the fact that we believe that God is the creator of the universe. But then the suitable way of talking in the science room is to use the language of empirical and provable fact to explore theories that are also the basis on empirical evidence.
Well, we have Ashfaq Chowdhury on the phone from the Association of Muslim Schools. Is this a storm in the teacup, or is this actually highlighting a fundamental clash here between science and religion? Is a legitimate discussion point?
I think I would start off by saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa nahmaduhu salli ala Rasul al-Karim. This particular notion that, science and religion are two different pathways, in my opinion, does not exist in Islam at all. In Islam, we are taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the roots and origins of creation. But at the same time, scientific facts over periods of time have changed. What was regarded as sort of a theory in the past, today we actually know them as being obsolete. So what I'm actually concerned about, the fact that, what is being highlighted is in the Muslim schools in general, scientific facts or scientific opinions, shall we say, are actually taught. And in religious studies on a separate notion, they are actually following their own curriculum and they're bringing up their judgments there. What Mr. Dawkins is actually doing is trying to crisscross both of them together, because children are entitled to their opinion, and we live in a democratic society in this country. Children are actually entitled to their opinion. So whichever fact that he's trying to bring up is conflicting. I can't actually see that as conflicting at all.
We have Mohammad Mukaddam, the principal of Leicester Islamic Academy. What has been your response? Do you think that it was quite deliberate that Muslim faith was targeted in this? Because clearly Christianity and Judaism and other monotheistic traditions have a very similar view on the idea that God created the universe, and yet the controversy once again seems to centre around the Islamic faith.
Well, I think the whole conversation needs to be put in its context, as the first speaker was saying. By the way, I was the principal at the Madani High School, where we are the only faith school and a Muslim school that were unafraid of inviting Professor Richard Dawkins in to discuss even the most difficult issues. So we're not frightened to discuss. We want to be engaged. We want our young people to be fully engaged, even though things are difficult. I think that there is a obvious disagreement between people like Richard Dawkins, who don't believe in or don't have any faith or don't believe in God, and the vast millions who do. The difference is, those of us who have faith, we would like to take a holistic approach to education, not a reductionist approach which the atheists are taking. By that I mean, human beings, we're complex beings. We have the intellectual as well as the spiritual, and both needs to be developed. So in our schools, we make sure that they are. On the spiritual side, as the DFE agree, we have every right to teach our children, just like other religions and other philosophies have their right, to teach about God and that He is a creator and a sustainer. At the same time, we have no problems when it comes to science to examine some of the new knowledge that is coming in terms of evolution, because the mind needs to understand new things, and young people can make up their own minds whether they want to believe this or that. But the role of education, and Muslim schools
are you saying, central to that. Forgive me for interrupting, that in Islamic schools, let's talk about specific Muslim schools as part of the faith school controversy, that the idea of evolution is taught? Because it seems that Richard Dawkins' criticism was that these ideas are not taught in the same way that they are in mainstream. Are they actually taught at all? Or are they rubbished right from the beginning in faith schools?
Well, I'm not sure he said those words exactly. He did come to our school, and he did see in science we do teach evolution, because there are, as you know, in science you are required to teach about evolution. So our science curriculum, like every other school, does cover evolution. But as I say, we balance that. When they go into the religious education classes, they're taught about God and creationism. One is a matter of the heart, the spirit. They believe in God, and God is the creator. And then the other is a matter of the intellect, to try and understand new knowledge, whether it's scientific theory, as people claim, or whether it's a notion, something which somebody thought about and wants to bring about and make people understand. So there are two different things, one of the intellect and one of the heart. And as people who take a holistic approach to education, we promote both. But the important thing is, I think Richard Dawkins should acknowledge that there's a lot to learn on both sides. For us to know more about new knowledge, even though if it's about evolution, so we can our young people understand what the contemporary thought and thinking is about certain aspects, including evolution. But also, it's important for other people to make sure that they also understand that people have different views. And because they're people of faith, they also have religious knowledge which they need to understand. So it's rather than criticizing and not giving Muslim schools a chance to come back, I think there should be an atmosphere of mutual respect, talking to each other, allowing young people to discuss these things so that there's greater understanding on both sides.
If I can put it to you, Richy, as a representative of the British Humanist Association, that you're hearing words of tolerance, saying yes, people can have different opinions, and all those opinions are reflected within the faith schools themselves. And often we associate religion with intolerance, and that's the main charge against religious institutions. And yet it seems it's the atheists here who are displaying intolerance for different views. How would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, referring back to when Richard Dawkins did visit that school, I mean, as Mohammad said, all schools are required to teach evolution from year 9, but the impression was very much given that they were teaching it. They were teaching it, but they were teaching it because they were required to. So they were teaching it to the test. But then the science teacher in the show was there explaining, but she didn't actually believe this, and that instead she believed the world was created.
And
now,
what's
when
the
it comes
problem
to
with that? Because surely if it's part of children's education, they are informed of the different theories, they're informed of different empirical evidence, and it's up to the children.
Well, it is very important.
Is there now going to be thought police as to what teachers individually believe? Is that going to be the new criteria?
It is very important that children are able to make up their own minds about questions of religion or belief. But when it comes to areas of scientific theory or scientific fact, as in this case, unfortunately, the facts will say one thing, and if people make up their mind in a different way, then they're not contradicting some religious idea, they're contradicting the reality of the situation. And so it's not the case that people can make up their own mind.
I think even scientists would say that it's still a theory. Yes, there's
evidence.
So there's competing theories here.
When they say that it is a theory, they mean it's a specific meaning of the word theory that is used in scientific context, that means that it's not something that they've got a mathematical proof for, but that they know is the case through evidence that's being gathered and gathered and gathered. So in exactly the same way, gravity is just a theory. So it's possible that some new evidence could come to light that disproves this theory, but then the evidence for evolution is so overwhelmingly strong that is extremely unlikely to happen. And the scientific consensus on evolution is incredibly strong, and it's not a matter of different sides with equal weights. There's only really one side that is taken seriously by the scientific community at all, and that's evolution.
Yeah.
Which is that there's a premise underpinning this whole debate, which I believe, not in my capacity as an MCB spokesman, but as an individual at this point, as a researcher into education, is profoundly mistaken. And that is that if you believe in evolution, you can't believe in God, and if you believe in God, you can't believe in evolution. Yes. And that's a profoundly mistaken premise, because they're talking about different things and different mechanisms.
But of course, there are scientists who believe in God and who also believe in evolution. Within the Muslim tradition itself, there will be people on both sides of it. So people who will say, for example, that evolution is just an explanation of how God created. So, and it doesn't mean that God did not create. It doesn't at all diminish the idea of faith in God. So it's almost a false clash.
It's a totally false clash. And actually, people who have deep faith have often said that the theory of evolution actually increases their faith in God, because it shows the patience of God in bringing His creation to fulfillment. It shows that the things that God does take billions of years to evolve. So it's not just a divine intervention smash into creation. It's something that matures over a lot of time. So actually, people of a deep faith have no trouble with evolution, and see no clash between that and their faith.
I was just curious as to how you respond to that, because even this idea of science and religion clashing, because even with the Enlightenment and all these ideas which are associated with being anti-God, a lot of those very ideas came from religious people themselves, and even Islam's contribution to the Renaissance, which often is not openly acknowledged, but the idea of research, science, and passing that information off, whether it's Greek knowledge or knowledge added on by Muslims themselves, it seems to have been eradicated out of Western school curricula, and that itself is a bone of contention. Would you understand that the concern around that?
Well, we're getting into wider questions of science now, and
well, it seems to me that's exactly what this debate is about.
The definition of science is that is